Hello, my name is Robert. I'm our Pastoral Ministries Coordinator here at Crest, joined today with Susie, one of our residents, and thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, Robert.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Susie, this is such a time of uncertainty and rapid change. You know, we are joking somewhat as a staff that all of our answers to our questions are, well, as far as I know right now. You know, it seems every time you turn on the TV or the computer, things have changed so much. You know, and there's been so much focus on our safety and meeting our physical needs here that are so greatly appreciated. But we find ourselves now settling into this time where really we are living in an altered reality, where our normal day-to-day functioning is disrupted. Mm-hmm. And not just our physical functioning, but our social supports, our emotional supports, and for many of us, even our spiritual supports, our spiritual community. Yeah. And so as a community that cares deeply about all the dimensions of wellness here at Crest, you know, we recognize that in a time where we have to physically distance ourselves from each other, that there are emotional and social and spiritual strains that can come with those. As we go into a season of uncertainty, you know, so many emotions come with that. Fear, anger, panic. For some, you know, there's joy and there's hope still abounding, and so many others. And this can be overwhelming. Yeah, I think just that's the sense that I feel. Whether it's a positive emotion or a negative emotion, it's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And as we settle into that reality and we look around and go, what happened? We start to ask those questions. Mm-hmm. Why? Why is this happening? Why is God allowing this? Who is God? These deep questions. And when we sit alone at home with no one to talk to, those questions can really start to spiral. And so, Susie, I want to thank you. As we were beginning just to collect resources, you reached out and said, you know, I have this article that I wrote.
I didn't say wonderful.
You did not say wonderful. That's true. I think it's wonderful. That you reached out and said, you know, hey, I've written this article. You know, maybe it would be helpful. And as I read it, I thought this is exactly, I think, the conversation so many of us are having right now. So thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm grateful to be here. For one thing, I'm a little starved for company.
Yeah,
so it's wonderful to sit and talk.
Absolutely,
yes,
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe if you could first just maybe introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about, you know, the publication that you have with you. And yeah.
Sure, I'm a Midwestern by background, but lived most of my life in the South, if you can believe that. Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, lived in that part of the world a lot. This is the 40th anniversary of my ordination this year, and you confided in me it's the 10th anniversary of yours.
It is, yes.
Ordained by the Lutherans, but not by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. They still do not ordain women, but by two other groups.
Okay.
So, and I have loved my life as a pastor. I have just loved it. It's been full of all the things we're going through now, unexpected things, surprisingly wonderful things, horribly awful things. It's been full of all of those things as I've lived out my life as a pastor. Lots of times folks ask questions. You're right, once, Robert, they get the basics of life down, they start to think about things. And sometimes our thinking is done when we're all alone. I don't know about you, Robert, but my worst thinking is about 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't think very well then.
Yeah.
But my brain would like me to wake up and think about things. And as soon as the sun rises, I feel better. So thinking about God, and where is God in all this, is a good question. Now, I was raised not to question God. I was told, good girls do not question God. That was a Sunday school teacher who was sick and tired of my questions. Good girls don't do that. But you know what? It's okay. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I went into the ministry that I did as well.
Yeah. And we have lots of examples in the Bible. People questioning God, asking why not. Yeah. So questioning is okay. I wrote this article in Gather magazine that the ELCA puts out. I wrote it because my friend Michelle had lost her home last August. Her home burned down. Totally, hers and Mark's. I gave them different names in here to protect their identity, but it had totally burned down, everything gone. At first they were there standing in the rubble, arms around each other's waists, just grinning. I saw that after hurricanes in Florida by the people who had just survived. Yay, we're alive, we made it, it's great, it's all great. Can't last.
No.
Can't last. On top of that, something that happened after this article was written and is now published this month, Michelle's daughter committed suicide. So we were dealing with huge and horrible questions, much worse than what we're in at the moment. In my humble opinion, I think this anyway. So where is God in the midst of COVID-19? Where is God in the midst of homes burning down, of 26-year-old beautiful daughters committing suicide? Where is God in all the midst of standing in lines to get our bags, to get our food put in our bags these days? What do we look for? How do we find God in all of this? What is going on? Now, I'll give you my opinion about things, Robert. What I believe, and I mean truly believe, not a fact, not something you look up on Wikipedia or somewhere else, but what I believe. But you know what, Robert? You don't have to ever agree with me. God is a little bit bigger than you and I are. Our kids in church the last time we worshiped together sang a song that says, God is so big. God is the God of the cosmos. Not just the world, the universe, but the cosmos. And God is also the God who's deep inside of each one of us and whom you just can't kick out, even when you want to, I believe.
Yeah.
So why would God let something like this happen?
Yeah.
For years I said, well, that's just a question we can never answer. But I've changed my mind about that. Not that I have any big answer that's going to be...
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. But where I hang out, where I reside with this is a broken world. This is a broken world. My daughter lives on the Ring of Fire in the Pacific, in Taiwan. Earthquakes are part of who she and her husband and 2 kids are. They know earthquakes. Nothing to worry about, she'll text me. Just a few pictures fell off the wall. Sometimes she'll say more. It's a broken world. Tectonic plates shift, lava flows, earthquakes happen, and people get killed and bruised and scared. It's a broken world, it really is. And I think it's broken with COVID-19. There's this nasty mutant virus, not a teenage mutant ninja turtle, but a mutant virus that we were ripe for the picking.
Yeah.
Broken world. That virus is having a feast on us.
It is, yes.
It's doing really well. It's thriving.
So some organism out there is having a great day.
Yes, it is. But oh, does it hurt us?
Yeah. And I think we're still in that uncertain time.
Yeah.
You know, and I think in that uncertainty, we don't have that grounding. The tectonic plates under us are shifting.
Yeah.
Our ground is constantly moving on us, and we're looking for that grounding, that foundation, that thing that we can lean on and say, okay, my world is okay because something makes sense. And I think I know for me it's finding that grounding of what makes sense. So where can I find God?
Where can you
this?
find God? Yeah.
So maybe can you tell me some places where maybe you're seeing God in the midst of the chaos?
Oh, experiencing, rejoicing in God, hanging with me, sticking with me, not giving up on me, and not giving up on anybody here or around the world. My friend Gary Harbaugh, psychologist, ELCA pastor, wrote a book right after 2009, wrote a book in which he said so many insurance companies, or perhaps pundits, say, well, it was an act of God. COVID-19 is an act of God. Gary said, oh no, our God is a God of loving kindness, patience, faithfulness to us. God doesn't jerk us around or play with us. God loves us like crazy, just like you are going to love your daughters the instant you see her when she's born this summer, or perhaps you love her in utero already.
For those that don't know, surprise.
Is that all right that I said that?
Absolutely.
Right. But I was crazy about
it's
my
probably
kids.
good so people know when I'm gone for 2 weeks here in a little bit. It's not COVID-19.
And you come back with the little stuff stuck to your shoulder.
Exactly.
A little spit up, a little drool.
Exactly.
Yeah. God is that crazy about us as we were when we first looked at our kids, and as we still love them like crazy. Yeah. So God does love us completely and utterly. I see it in your eyes. I see it in the eyes of my husband, Tim, who's living with dementia and is about 2 years old chronologically and not chronologically, intellectually. His eyes are beautiful. I look into them and I see deep into him. His smile comes on first thing in the morning when he's awake, and it turns off when the light turns off at night. He is a joyful man. He is filled with joy. He doesn't have a clue as to what his grandchildren's names are. And I know one day mine will disappear too for him.
Yeah.
But he'll know I'm there. He'll know I love him.
Yeah.
And he'll still love me. So that kind of love is a gift from God and won't let us go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think for many of us we can understand that idea that God loves us, that maybe God allowed this, some people will say, but God didn't do this to us. So we still grasp for an answer though, right? So we say, well, this isn't God's fault. Maybe this is their fault or my fault.
Uh-huh.
You know, maybe I deserve this. What would you say to that?
I would say, my heart weeps. My heart weeps. I know that's a genuine thought of feeling a deep, dark, guilty, even shameful feeling that we deserve somehow or other the punishment. Oh, but I grieve about that. I'm so sad about that. I can say this as a mom of 4. Have I ever decided that I should give my child a real lesson by breaking their arm because they've been a little bit too foolhardy with their lives? Would I go out and get a bat and break my child's arm and say, here, that's what you deserve? No, I would not do that. And neither does God do that with us.
Yeah.
These things are not an active God, but they lead to an active God who's always, always with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the tectonic plates might be shifting still, and I think they will. On NPR this morning, an interviewer said to an FDA official, you keep saying we're still a long ways away from finding a solution. Our listeners don't want to hear that. And the official said, we're still a long ways away from a solution, and we are.
Yeah.
Those tectonic plates are still going to be shifting. But God's hanging on to us. Just like, like a mother hangs on to a child when there's any danger around. A mother hangs tight to that child and will never let go. Yeah. So God is there for us.
Yeah.
Not punishing us, but grieving with us. Grieving with us.
Yeah. I imagine God grieving the world and the hurt and the pain in this time too. We've talked some about the natural disaster and of earthquakes, and I grew up in the South on the coast as well, in North Carolina, so I'm familiar with hurricanes. And someone asked me one time, they said, how can you live somewhere where hurricanes are a constant threat? And I started thinking about all of the different areas of the world and the country where everywhere is prone to some form of natural disaster, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, and hurricanes, and so many others. And what I began to realize was I can move anywhere, and a natural disaster is a possibility. At least with a hurricane, I know it's coming.
Yes.
I know how to prepare or how to get out of its way. I know what to expect. And I think, at least here, as we, to my knowledge, are not facing any cases, and I have not heard of any residents whose families are facing or friends are facing any cases. It's that fear of the unknown, that it could strike any of us at any time. And it's that constant worry and fear. Maybe we're not questioning why it's happening because it's not happening to us, but it's that fear of, could it happen to me? Could it happen to my parents? Could it happen to my child? Could it happen to my best friend? So what's a spiritual and faithful response to fear?
I think it's always faithful to acknowledge fear, to name it out loud.
Yeah.
When it remains unnamed, it's like that mysterious ghost that creeps around under our bed. Sometimes I still think there might be something under my bed, but it's something if we name it and say it out loud and tell someone else about it. That's a very human thing to feel. It's part of who we are as God's children.
Yeah.
And when we share it with one another, we find some community and some relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. As I think as a country, as a world, there's this kind of underlying kind of sense of dread and on some level of fear. And I think you're right. I think it's important to acknowledge that and healthy. I think it's okay to say, I'm scared for my parents. I'm scared for my loved ones. I'm worried about my neighbor.
Yeah.
And I think, in my faith, there is a belief in a God who is there, who is with us, who loves us. And I think the important thing for me that there is a God who is with us and standing with us. So that fear is natural. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm afraid. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about what this could mean for loved ones' health, for the economy, for the world. But what do I do with that fear? I think to me, I lift it up to God and say, God, I'm afraid. help me, be with me.
Yes, to acknowledge that fear as you talk with God, as we all talk with God, to acknowledge that. And then God also knows when we're afraid even before we know that, before we've identified it anyway. God knows that about us and is right there already giving us hope and comfort. There was a young woman in a congregation I served years ago. She was 13, never been baptized and wanted to be, but scared stiff to be baptized. She was so scared of it, Robert. She was scared that after she was baptized, she would mess up. She thought that as someone who was a baptized child of God, they should be perfect and they should never mess up. So she thought, if I'm baptized and I mess up, then quits. It's all over. Done for me.
It only took me about 5 minutes to get past that fear because I messed right up. So
yeah. So that's something that we know is a part of who we are. And then people show up in our lives. People show up as angels from God. I'm convinced of that. Now, I'm not being hokey here. I'm not being frou-frou here. Angels do show up. I was in a bad car accident. Drunk driver hit me head on. People shouting at me in the middle of the night, this was, when drunk people are out, shouting at me, get out of your car, because it was smoking and I was hurting, and drunk driver there, somewhere, I don't know where, and crowd shouting me, get out of the car, and I knew something was wrong with me, that I shouldn't get out of the car because I was broken. And a young man appeared at my window, kind of knelt down by my car window. Interesting, there was still 90s music playing on my radio. Knelt down by my window, had long hair, I remember that, and an earring, I remember that. And said, it's all right. You can stay right there. You're all right. Your gas tank is far away from where your car is smoking. You're okay. Not to worry. I'm going to stick with you. And then he was there with me, touching me gently on my shoulder. And then we could hear the sirens coming, and those folks came and took over. I am so convinced that he came to bring me peace at a moment when I was far from peaceful.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know exactly how and whatever, and however that happened. I'm grateful to let God be in charge of those things.
Yeah.
So that's pretty dramatic, but there are people around here who I've experienced that from.
Yeah, and I've seen that over and over, just the positive attitudes and mindsets and gratitude and prayers of our community. So we have just a few minutes left, and in that time, wondering what some of your spiritual practices look like that maybe can help others. Some of the things you're doing to stay spiritually active in the midst of social distancing, isolation.
The first thing I'm having to remind myself to do is breathe. The words in the Judeo-Christian tradition for breath are the same words used for spirit.
Pneuma and ruach.
Yes, to breathe, to take deep breaths in and out, and feel the world around us, and know the reality of all the things that touch our bodies and that our bodies are about are as real as the God who's moving with us. I then have to go to some of the wonderful things that have upheld me for years. When I was on the way, urgent call. 16-year-old in our church had died in the dentist's office. On my way to the hospital, he'd played his violin 2 days before Easter Sunday for our service. I didn't know how I'd make it except for me, for my tradition, to pray, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." I said that over and over and over again when, Robert, I was too anxious to make a prayer of my own. I prayed that over and over and over again, and still remember how rude that Florida sunshine was that day. So I go to some of those prayers, and then I breathe some more. And then I do a breath prayer. I say, let go as I breathe in, and let God as I breathe out. Let go and let God, over and over. And then by that time, I'm usually in a better space to say, okay, God, here's the deal. I'm forgetting you're there. I'm just such a miserable human being. Well, God, you know that's not totally true. But I do forget in my anxiety, in my worry. Yeah. And now I can remember that you're there. So I listen for your voice, God. And then when I think you're not answering me, I hear a voice down the hall, as I did yesterday, saying, oh, I hoped that was you. And a electric chair whizzing up a little faster to come and pull up by me. And I said, 6 feet. So we giggled and 6 feet away. And she just wanted me to know that she had some new medication that relieved her congestive heart failure. I didn't really know her. I didn't remember her name, but she told me, Eleanor, relieve her congestive heart failure. And then she was telling me it was reminded her this time of when her husband was dying, that this time seemed like that time. It was all uncertain. Prostate cancer led to lung cancer, and he slowly died. Tectonic plates she stood on. But then looking back, she knew God had been there all the time.
I think there's something so powerful in those moments of reflection and saying, I remember this person. I don't think that's an accident. To then reach out to that person and say, I just want you to know I was thinking of you.
Yeah.
You know, just like your neighbor did.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's such an important reminder.
And you know, Robert, I don't think she knew my name. She knew my smile.
Yep.
She knew I always greeted her. And she was hoping it was me when she saw me down the hallway.
Yes, and I think those smiles and those memories are so important right now.
Right.
Well, Susie, thank you for your
Robert,
time.
Do we have time to do one more thing?
Yes.
Read a prayer?
Absolutely would love that. And
all right.
before you do, maybe if you want to, is there any way if anyone's interested in that article you wrote that they can access a copy of the magazine or?
I invite you to get a hold of me.
Okay.
May I give you my email address?
Sure.
It is suegamelin@gmail.com. I'm Susie Gamelin. I used to be Sue Gamelin, but I'm Susie Gamelin@gmail.com.
Perfect.
I'm on My Erickson.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Thank you. Yes, if you have a prayer you would love to close us with, that would be wonderful.
This is a wonderful prayer. So I invite you and anyone who'd care to just join me in praying it. And I like to pray out loud.
Yes.
I like to pray with eye contact. I'd like to keep my hand open. Let God have some room here. But I like to be in community. And so the prayer is like this. O God, you call your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. Amen.
Amen. Susie, thank you.
You're welcome, Robert.
And we'll see you all next time.